Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So just in case you're new here, because we've actually gained quite a few subscribers recently, this channel is one where we basically discuss public transportation in numerous different cities. We do analysis of the transit systems in different cities, and we do cool, fun stuff like tour around local transit stations and try to visit every transit station in the city. So today what we're going to be discussing is a really hot topic in the news. What is Ontario's current government planning to do with Toronto's transit plans? Thanks. So the Ontario government has proposed changing 4 of the lines proposed in Toronto's current transit plan. Now, before I go into any deeper discussion, I just want to say I want to keep this channel apolitical. So we're only going to kind of discuss political topics insofar as they're related to transit. I just want to get that out of the way because this can be a hot button issue, but we're not really sticking to politics. We're sticking to what do I think is a good plan and what do I think is not a good plan. So the 4 plans, or the 4 lines that the Ontario government is talking about changing are the Yonge North subway extension, the Scarborough subway extension, the Downtown Relief Line, and the Eddington West LRT project. So let's start with the Downtown Relief Line. So probably, in most people's opinion, the most critical project in Toronto's subway system or Toronto's rapid transit system kind of in the 21st century is the Downtown Relief Line. It's really needed to relieve the Yonge University line between Eglinton and downtown. Now note, I didn't just say between Bloor Yonge and downtown because the problem really does start at Eglinton, and it's going to get even worse once the Eglinton Crosstown opens. Now, the Ford government has been kind of interesting about this line. They haven't actually said what they're going to do other than to say that it's a new technology and that it's a much better plan, and Doug Ford actually said his jaw dropped when Metrolinx presented the plan. Now, that's interesting because we all know that Doug Ford is a huge subway supporter, so whatever plan they propose needs to be something that actually ups the ante on that a bit. Now, there's really 2 potential options that come to mind of most of us in the transit community. The first option would be something similar to Montreal's REM or the Sydney Metro. Basically using existing rapid transit lines as well as perhaps some new tunnels in downtown along with some lighter automated trains to provide a similar service to the Downtown Relief Line, but since the trains would be smaller and automated, you'd potentially save a lot of money on building the system. However, there is some questions that get raised. If the stock being used on it is not the same as the current Toronto subway, then there's currently nowhere to store those trains. So that kind of whole project would probably require some scope expansion from the current plan, which is to go from Osgoode out to Pape Station on the Bloor-Danforth line. I imagine that if something similar to REM is proposed in Toronto, that we'll probably see it go further north than Pape as to kind of connect to a new location where it's possible to build a depot. Some people have proposed that perhaps it will connect to the Go Richmond Hill line in kind of north Toronto, where you could potentially find some land for an operations and maintenance facility. Now, the other possible plan that people have suggested is something like an S-Bahn or a U-Bahn, where you have, or perhaps the best example, RER A or B in Paris, where you have double-decker trains operating underground. So akin to this in Toronto would be something like an electrified GO transit system operating underground. You'd potentially save money in some operations and maintenance facilities and some of the tracks perhaps between East Harbour and Gerrard Station in Toronto. However, both of these proposals, both the REM style one and the GO Transit running underground one, kind of raise a lot of questions. How is it possible that, especially in the case of using something like GO Train, that you actually save money because those trains are huge? So in that case, we still get suggested that we're going to be using some smaller trains than what are currently proposed for the Downtown Relief Line. Nonetheless, there's not much else we can say, and at this point it's all speculation. However, we do expect to have some more answers when the provincial budget is released on April 11th. At that point, we'll probably shoot another video. Oh, and there is one more thing I should mention. The provincial government really wants to push private investment in the system. A project like REM would make a lot of sense in that case since the Quebec pension fund, known as The Case, is actually funding the REM project. They also are a major stakeholder in Vancouver's Canal Line subway/SkyTrain. So perhaps we could see something like The Case or perhaps Cadillac Fairview get involved to help finance the project. Of course, we'll know more on April 11th. So for the Yonge North subway extension, not many changes are actually proposed. The plan is just kind of to run it in sync with the Downtown Relief Line project. Beyond that, there's not much to really say. I do think that the Yonge North subway extension could potentially bring some problems, given the fact that the Relief Line Long so far isn't planned. However, who knows, with the potential proposed plan that the Ford government is pushing, that perhaps Relief Line Long is not as important in the future. Nonetheless, the TTC has actually said that they're going to be going ahead with the Bloor-Yonge expansion project. So perhaps capacity will not be as big of an issue in the future. Anyways, that's all I have to say about the Yonge North subway extension. Now, the next project I'm going to discuss is the Eddington West LRT. Now this one may be the one that's the most controversial. The provincial government is basically saying the Waterfront LRT and the Eglinton East LRT are off the table. However, the West Eglinton LRT will be buried. Now, let's pause for a second. When I hear buried, I don't really think buried, I think grade separated. So perhaps sections will be elevated, sections will be at grade, but there won't be level crossings. Now, as much as many people are opposed to this plan, I actually don't have a huge problem with it. I think that in this case, the provincial government actually has an okay plan. When you think about the Eglinton West LRT, it's very, very critical regionally because it connects to Mississauga, which is a massive city. It's only growing and becoming more dense by the day. It's going to have its own LRT system, and the Eglinton West LRT is going to connect with Mississauga's transitway at Ronforth Gateway. When you consider that, as well as the fact that the Eglinton West LRT is going to connect to Pearson Airport, having the kind of capacity and ride time consistency that grade separation offers does make a lot of sense, especially if, for example, international travelers are going to be using this to get downtown in Toronto, as well as along Eglinton Avenue and really anywhere else in the system. You also need to consider the fact that a lot of people are likely to move off the Up Express once a kind of alternative transit offering gets made available to Pearson that's a lot cheaper. It's going to be a TTC fare, which should still be at max, I can imagine by the time this is completed, will still be less than half the cost of the Up Express. Given the fact that it's a regional connector, the fact that Pearson's going to be connected, the fact that the Eglinton Crosstown already is a hugely important line because it connects several GO lines, several TTC lines, I do think that building for the capacity for the future and grade separating the line doesn't necessarily mean it's a huge mistake. I actually could support that. So now I'm going to talk about the Scarborough subway extension. Just saying that makes me a little bit uncomfortable because this debate has been going on for decades at this point. One person wants one thing, another person wants another thing. LRT, subway, 3-stop, 1-stop, SRT, RT, LRT, Smart Track. Everyone wants a different thing built in Scarborough, and at this point, I really think it's just unnecessary to change the plans. Even if the current plan is not ideal, I think that the kind of consensus that John Tory came to was like, we have to build something. If we just spend all of time proposing new plans, nothing will ever get built, and no one will be able to ride anything. The current plan is unlikely to be kind of finished before like 2027, and now if it gets delayed by adding more stops to the current plan, it's only going to get worse. Now, that being said, I don't think anyone's a huge fan, including John Tory, of the current plan, which will cost over $3 billion, will actually reduce the number of stops on the subway by 4, and will add only, of course, 1 new stop. Now, the Ford government is proposing to add a station to the south and north of Scarborough Centre, and well, that does make a lot of sense in a network sense, because adding the station to the north allows for a future extension of the Shepherd subway east to connect to it, and then adding the station at Lawrence adds another stations along Lawrence Avenue, which is a busy street in Toronto. Now, the northern station, I suppose, does make that sense because Sheppard is kind of infamous for having low ridership. The Sheppard subway carries less people every day than the King streetcar. That's really, really sad. Now, beyond that, there's not much I can say about the additional stations. Originally, the plan in Toronto was to have those additional stations. The plan was changed. At this point, I think what would make most people happy is just to get the damn thing built. I think that's all I have to say about the Scarborough subway. So those are my thoughts on these 4 lines that the Government of Ontario is proposing to change. Now, beyond that, there's not much we can say. We don't really know fully what's going to happen, but I'm going to keep you guys posted on what happens down the road. We'll probably hear more about the Downtown Relief Line, as I said, on April 11th when the province releases their budget. Expect another video on the channel on that day. Beyond that, all I can say is thanks for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please do subscribe. It helps us so much. Definitely leave comments down below. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. It's an interesting ongoing discussion. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, which makes it all the more fun. And yeah, share this video with people who you think might be interested. And as always, have a good night.